So it looks like it is 12:01, so we will go ahead and get started. If anybody has any issues, I will go through how to communicate that and let me know what's going on. Otherwise, we will just keep on moving. Okay, so welcome to our small dairy herd management series. This is the first session in a series of 8, which will continue through December 2nd. All of these will be recorded just in case you miss one or want to go back and listen later, and they will be posted on YouTube. I will make sure to either email out the link or get it in the chat for us. So session 1, we're going to talk about let's get to dairying. It's going to be pretty basic, kind of covering not really common sense stuff, but just kind of that foundation layer. And then throughout our series, I've invited a lot of different guests from Missouri, works at Banks, some of my colleagues, as well as a colleague from North Carolina. So they will all be part of our team and will be featured in different sessions along the way. So kind of the overall goals of this webinar series is just to give an introduction to the dairy industry, whether you're a longtime dairy farmer or you're brand new, just getting started. I hope this can cater to just about everybody who is interested in dairy. We're going to learn how to best manage a smaller herd. That will be done in the sections, through the sessions, or as a step-by-step approach. I also want to create that informative experience again for all different levels of knowledge. And while we're in our Zoom session, you're more than welcome to ask a question. You can do that from the chat box, which is down here, should be at the bottom or the top of your screen. You can type questions in there and submit them to me directly, or you're more than welcome to email me, whatever is easier for you. Okay, so you just get me today to talk about kind of our introductory things. Well, my name is Chloe Collins, and I am a regional dairy field specialist for the University of Missouri Extension. So I actually started back in July of 2023, so coming up on my 1-year anniversary with Extension, and I'm loving it. So my main focus area is, of course, Southwest Missouri, but we're going to talk dairy in Missouri and all over the country today as well. So what I mainly do is I deliver educational programs such as these to dairy farmers or really anybody interested in dairy production. I also do on-farm visits, as well as I can write different informational articles and pieces like that. Besides that, I will also serve on different committees as well as advisory boards. So if you've heard of Soil and Water Conservation District, I help with that. And my main interest is cattle reproduction. That's what my master's is in. So of course, if you have any reproduction questions, please send them my way. Okay. So let's get to dairying. So our first session, again, is going to be just kind of basic background information. Some of it may seem redundant, but I always think it's so important to start with the basics. Okay. So let's see if I can get our poll going so we can answer some questions. There we go. So hopefully that is popping up on y'all's end. If not, please send me a little chat. So let's talk about it. What is your experience with dairy farming and where are you looking to go with it? So there's a couple different answers to our questions here, kind of from you want to start your own herd or you already have a herd. Just kind of let me know where we're at. Okay, I will let that keep going. So whenever everyone has time to answer it, that'll be great. So ideally, we're structuring this for those beginning farmers and for those people who probably don't have dairy cows right now and want to get into it. But I am not opposed at all to getting more into the weeds. If you want to email me some specific questions, that would be awesome. Okay, So very, very basic. My favorite thing is vocabulary. If I don't know what a word means, I'm always Googling it to find out. So we'll go through them fairly quickly. So the main ones in here are what you'll hear me reference today. So a cow, of course, is a female dairy animal who has already had a calf. A calf is that young animal of either sex, male or female, that the cow just produced. A heifer is a younger dairy female, so older than a calf, but she has not yet had a baby or a calf. A bull is a intact male animal, so male dairy cow, if you will. A steer is a castrated male dairy animal. We go over to our right-hand side of the screen. Our fresh cow is a cow who has just recently given birth to a calf. So you may hear the term or someone say she has just freshened. That's what that means. A dry cow is a cow that is not milking and they're in the last 50 to 70 days of gestation, or in their dry period, as somebody may refer to it. So of course, after we go through our dry period, that calf is birthed, we move into our lactation period. So this is when that cow is actively milking, either feeding that calf or being milked by us. That usually lasts around 305 days. And then the last one, which we'll dive into more kind of at the end of our time together today, is conventional dairy. So when people think conventional dairy, they probably think those big, huge operations, which conventional actually does not mean that. It is just not organic and not purely grass-fed management. So again, we'll kind of dive into these terms and talk about them some more throughout today. But of course, if you have any questions pop up, send them in the chat or send me an email. Okay. So why in the world are we even doing this? Why should we talk about dairy? Why are we talking about small herds? And it is a huge part of not only the United States economy, not only Missouri economy, but the world. So dairy farming in general, it's going to encompass all facets of that production of that dairy animal, from breeding to raising them, and then utilizing those in the form of milk or continuing to reproduce. And then milk is the only product that's going to come straight from the cow, besides a calf or meat or whatever you turned an AF to, while they're still alive. And then it can be turned into many more dairy products that we think of, like, of course, milk, butter, cream, cheese, ice cream, heavy cream, all sorts of stuff. And for my own selfish purposes, dairy is awesome. So when we're talking about small dairy herd management, what are we going to consider a small dairy? So technically, the USDA classifies that as a production of 100 or fewer cows. That's not counting calves, that's not counting your bulls, just your producing cows. For our purposes during this series, we're going to be considering a small dairy herd to be 20 animals or less. So that can include everybody from your cows to your calves to your heifers, whoever is on your farm. I'm going to be considering 20 animals or less. So this series, of course, is going to be perfect for those considering just a family cow and not that commercial production that we typically think of. Okay. So I'm also a little bit of a history nerd. So to keep building our foundation, we're going to talk a little bit about the dairy industry history. So it's been around for forever. Milk cows, the idea of milking, people drinking milk, really in the 1600s in the United States is where dairy cows are really started to be utilized to produce milk and meat for your family. So it's kind of funny how we're moving from small to big production back to small production. So once the population in the United States really started ramping up, people started moving into cities and congregating themselves. That's when our larger scale milk production started to increase. So you can see some of these older ads for pasteurized milk and really when those advances started taking off. So more along the lines of advancements, lots of inventions happened during that time, the 1800s, even into the 1900s, that made dairy the enterprise that it is now. So it not only helped with milk safety, but efficiency. For example, you can see this guy in the picture over here. He has a Mering milking machine, which actually was invented in the 1890s, and it made milking so much quicker. So before this, of course, people were hand milking, sitting on the stool with a bucket, which doesn't take too long, but this is just a little bit faster. Okay, the last bit of our little history journey. One of the most important inventions in the dairy industry in terms of milk safety is pasteurization. So this man over here on the right, this is Louis Pasteur. He invented the idea of pasteurization in 1865 and actually started with wine. So he adapted it from wine to be used in milk, and we still use the same process today. So it's absolutely critical to ensuring milk safety and stopping the spread of those bacteria that can potentially cause diseases. I know some people are really into drinking raw milk, and that is fine. But for our large scale production and to be more safe for children and elderly people, pasteurization is a key process. Okay, so let's go on back to present terms and talk about dairy in our economy today. So this is taking into account all facets of production, small herds, large herds, very commercial herds, like you think of Walmart or Kroger, that do own their own dairy herds. So the dairy industry in America, from products to labor, every single thing, has a $793 billion impact on our economy. But if you've kind of been listening to recent trends in agriculture, mainly livestock, herd numbers are declining across the board. From dairy to beef, everybody is losing that cow inventory. But a reason for that is prices are so high, so everybody's selling. So let's kind of break it down and look at it in graphs. This graph is showing milk production by state in million pounds. So I am in Missouri, so of course my eyes go there first. Our production is down 25%. And then other places like Texas, they're ramping up production. And just take a look across the board and see how our numbers are changing. And sometimes you can notice how they're divided into regions as well. So kind of in our southeast corner, we are losing a lot of production. But that makes sense because it's also very hot and humid down there. So just an interesting graph to kind of look across the board and see how everyone's doing. Then back into our herd numbers. So we can see that actually milk cows, they have increased. This was 2021. So we would have drawn that graph out to now, you would probably see a dip back down. Another thing is looking at our replacement heifers making up the percentage of the total milking animals in a herd. Our number of replacement heifers is very much going down, which can be problematic. Okay, so not to get in the weeds too much on that, we can talk about it in further sessions. But moving on to Missouri. So again, we can kind of see that same trend of the inventory is going down. This one actually reaches out to 2024, which is great. Just stay on top of things. Inventory is going down. Everybody is selling, taking advantage of prices in the sale barns. And then this next herd or graph is pretty interesting as well. So if we look at our blue bars, this is all the grade A dairy farms in Missouri. So grade A is selling fluid milk. And then if we look at the light gray bars, those are manufacturing grade. So when we talk about manufacturing grade, these are farms that their milk is not high enough quality to be sold as fluid grade A milk. It doesn't mean that it's bad milk necessarily, but it doesn't meet those super, super high standards imposed on our grade A farms. Okay, last graph, then we can keep going. So this is mainly why I want to explore the small herd management. So if we look on that left side of the graph, this is showing numbers of cows in a herd in Missouri. So Missouri is the yellow bar, and then the United States as a whole is the black bar. And then across the bottom of the graph, we can see the percentage of operations that fall into these categories. So I want to draw your attention to that bottom bar on the left. Those are 1 to 9 head of cows in a herd. If we look at Missouri, 25% of our herds in Missouri are those small dairy herds. So it's not an unknown concept. It's not anything brand new, but we can kind of see how Missouri is trending to those smaller herds. Okay. So just to keep on trucking, we're going to talk about what is going to make dairy successful. And this can be applicable across the board, whether we're talking about the nation as a whole, or just Missouri, or whatever state you're in. So consumer perception is one of the driving forces for dairy markets. So I'm sure you've all heard of or seen the Fairlife videos that really depicted dairy in a not so great light. So when consumers see that, but they don't see the other side of dairy, like all of our farmers doing great work, taking great care of their herds, and making sure that cattle health is one of their main priorities, those kind of things hardly ever get shared. Or if they do, they don't really go viral in a sense, as compared to our bad and more headline catching news. And I'm sure you guys have heard of the dairy flu that's going around. That is a fear tactic by news channels to make that spread so fast. Where in the background, you don't really hear about all the good work being done on the research side to try and mitigate that. So just making sure consumers are seeing dairy in a good, positive light as much as we can is going to help us out a ton. So next up, efficiency and sustainability from on the farm all the way to the supply chain. This was one of those things that was really talked about in COVID. People really started paying attention to, oh, where does our food come from? It doesn't just show up on grocery shelves. So as long as we can maintain that production and make sure shelves are stocked, make sure consumers are taken care of, it's going to definitely help the dairy industry as a whole, which seems like a not really big concept because it's such a pretty dynamic and efficient process as it is, but just making sure that people are educated about it. And then kind of more topics that we're going to get into with our series is how as we as small herd managers, how can we help that big scale production? So that kind of goes back to our first point. As small herd managers, we kind of have a fun opportunity to share what we do on a day-to-day basis. Since we're not managing 500, 1,000, 2,000 cow dairies, we may have a little bit of extra time in our days. I know that's a big assumption, just to kind of share what we're doing. Maybe snap a picture when you're milking your cows or feeding them and just share it. And then can we diversify? So even if you have a very small herd, maybe 5 or less cows, what can you do to really take advantage of all your markets? Could you breed those dairy cows to beef cows and then sell beef? Could you sell milk? Could you make cheese? Kind of all the different avenues that are available to us. Okay, so kind of the fun stuff we'll get out of talking in the weeds, but breeds of cows. So this is super important to just know what's out there when you're considering how to build your herd. So in the dairy industry, there are now 7 breeds that are widely recognized. It used to be 6, but we've added on the red and white, so that cow on the left, as a recognized breed. So all that red and whites are just red and white Holsteins. So same frame, same build, same genetics. We're just a little recessive in that we have a red color. And then you may hear of crossbred cows. So that's when these breeds are bred to one another to create that crossbred, which increases hybrid vigor or heterosis. So kind of making the best of both worlds, if you will. And that's been increasingly popular too in our dairy industry, and as well as beef. So kind of some fun facts, but also things to definitely consider where you're building your herd. Holsteins have the highest milk production of all the breeds. So these gals are going to be turning out many more pounds of milk than some of their counterparts from other breeds. So what that would look like if that was on your farm is you are going to have to store a lot more milk And you're also going to have to feed her a lot more since she's producing so much. So consider that if you decide to select a Holstein for your herd. Then next is Jerseys. They are actually the smallest of all the dairy breeds and the most heat tolerant. So if we think about those people in Texas, they want maybe more of a heat tolerant cow. Or for our purposes as small herdsmen, if we have very small acreage on our farm, Jerseys would be great because they're small. They're not going to take up a lot of space. They're not going to eat as much as our very tall Holstein friends. So another breed that we can consider is milking Shorthorns. So they are a dual purpose breed and then can be used for milk and meat. So as I was kind of talking and hinting at earlier, if we ever want to breed dairy and beef, milking Shorthorn could be a really good opportunity for that. And then lastly, our last little shout out is Brown Swiss. They have a high protein to fat ratio within their milk, which is really good when it comes to making cheese. So kind of whatever your goals are as a small herd, make sure your breeds align with your goals and your management style and what you have available to you. So again, if we have any questions as I'm going along, if I need to repeat anything, talk a little bit further, again, just send those in the chat and we'll get to it. Okay, so kind of the chicken or the egg question. Which should come first on your operation, the calf or the cow? So just depending on your experience, if you've had prior experience with livestock or not, and your current needs at the time, you may elect to buy that calf first versus a cow. So this is kind of the age-old question of where do you start? And my favorite extension answer is, well, it depends. So whatever is going to fit best with you, again, we're going to talk about a dead horse all day long here with this, is going to be best for your operation. So things to kind of consider when making that decision, consider your supply and demand. What is selling a bunch right now? What is available? If we have a lot of Holsteins selling in the market, more than likely they're going to be cheaper. If we are short on Jerseys one day, they're probably going to be priced a little bit higher. And then time of year can be another good thing to consider. So usually, as well as in the beef market, fall is usually the best time to buy since everybody's weaning those spring calves. And then productive age. You kind of want to be careful whenever you're buying that first cow for your herd. So just know if she is a brand new heifer, so around 2 years old, she's going to have a lot longer production life in theory than that 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old cow. And of course, that all goes into your management and how hard you milk or how hard you push them can affect their productive age. And then bred animals. So sometimes you may go to a sale barn and they will be selling a bred cow. So what that means is she is pregnant, she's going to have a calf, and they'll either classify that by first, second, or third part of their gestation. And then expectation versus reality. Make sure what you're getting is what you see. Sometimes it is a little bit tricky when you go into sale barns, you're just seeing that calf or cow run through the ring really fast, and you don't really get to stand there and look at her. So just make sure whatever you're doing, again, it fits with your operation, fits with what you're able to purchase, and makes sense. And then another thing to consider is, are you ready to milk? If you bring home a lactating cow and you don't have a milker, that may be a little bit of an issue. If you bring home a calf and you are ready to grow it out and kind of take that journey too and wait, then that may make more sense for you. So just again, analyzing where you're at, seeing what's going to fit best, and we can help with this. So again, if you're like, I have this, but I don't know what to get, call me, email me, and I'll be happy to sit down and talk with you about it. Okay, and then the other fun thing, where in the world are you going to buy your dairy animals from? So there are many markets that you can acquire a dairy cow, calf, whatever you're looking for from. The most popular one that people think of is sale barns. So that is a good option. Sometimes they will have herd dispersals through a sale barn, usually sold as bigger groups. but you may have like a one-off cow here or there that may catch your eye. Another option is local farms or private farms. And so sometimes they may offer a private sale at their farm, or if you have a good enough relationship, you may be able to call them or politely show up one day and be like, hey, do you have any cows for sale? I'm interested. So that's a good way if you really want to get in there and inspect your animal, really see her before you buy her. I would suggest going through a local farm. And then online auctions. Again, some of these can be tricky. Usually online auctions are either herd dispersals or higher priced animals. And then kind of a last resort, I don't know if I always trust this one, but it is an option, is Facebook Marketplace. You can find all kinds of stuff on there, even dairy cows. And then my last little beware of is beware of cull cows. So cull cows are an animal that is being taken out of the herd for a number of different reasons. It could be she's just not producing anymore. Maybe she's open or can't breed back, or maybe she just has some attitude issues that wasn't fitting with their management style. Whenever you're buying that cull cow, it's not a bad thing, but just beware of why she's being sold because there's usually a reason. Okay, then since we are talking about smaller herds, they do have a lot more flexibility to pick and choose their market or niche marketing. So this is kind of, when I think niche marketing, sometimes I think of farmers markets. So kind of that small little one-off business, but they can really flex week to week based on what their customers are wanting. So some things you can consider when making your marketing plan or thinking of why do you want to own dairy cows? What are you going to do with them? Are you going to go organic or grass-fed, which sometimes really means a lot to people? Are you going to produce just fluid milk, or do you want to get into separating your own cream? Do you want to get into other milk products like cheese, butter, dry milk? Every single one of these has a place somewhere out there in the market. You just have to figure out what's going to work best for you and what your local community is interested in. Maybe you want to do on-farm retail, where you sell your milk, sell your cheese, maybe even sell beef. If you have enough people around you and enough interest, that can be a really great option as well. And then a whole nother direction you can go with your small dairy herd is show animals. Some people do want to invest in those high quality genetics and go around and show their dairy animals at fairs, even different state shows, and all the way up at World Dairy Expo, which if you have not been, Google World Dairy Expo. But again, with all of this, just be aware of your community, be aware of your local markets, and definitely any regulations in your immediate area about just the sale and the use of dairy products. And if you need resources on any of those, please let me know if you have any questions on what you can and can't do. I'm more than happy to answer those and provide you some good resources. Okay, and then kind of still in that organic versus grass-fed niche marketing style, let's kind of explore what those mean. Because these terms, they can be a little bit confusing. They can get a little mixed up sometimes. So we're going to break it down. So organic versus grass-fed versus conventional are all management styles. So with organic, these animals are raised on feed that has not been exposed to fertilizers or pesticides, and they also have access to pasture. However, organic does not mean that they are not going to be treated with antibiotics when medically necessary. So I've even added a good link in the chat box that links this PDF, which really breaks down organic dairy in Missouri. So that was very helpful to read through that and see all the cans and all the can'ts when you get into organic. And then when we talk about grass-fed, so when people think grass-fed, they think pasture dairy animals, which you're kind of correct. So dairy animals are all a 100% forage diet, meaning no grains like corn, soybeans, any of that. And this diet is fed as either fresh pasture that they're grazing or as stored feed, so cut hay, cut silage, any kind of just forage in any form. And then conventional, again, it is not meaning those big confinement operations. Conventional is just a normal ration or a TMR, which is a total mixed ration, where they can have grains and forage sources. So in conventional, usually grains do not exceed 40% of that diet, and we can talk about that more when we get into our nutrition session. So we're going to kind of keep it short today. There's not too much that we can dive into with our basis session, but I kind of want to leave you with this. So no matter the style of management that you're choosing for your herd, it's not better than the others. It's only matters what fits your goals and available resources the best. So if you were set up to do a 100% organic dairy, wonderful. Take advantage of that and run. If you want to do a conventional dairy, amazing if that fits your management style and your resources. So just kind of think, make those considerations, see what you have, see what you can get. And again, if you need my help kind of exploring that, if you want to do farm visits, I'm all about it. Please let me know how I can help. So again, this is me. This is how you can get a hold of me. My email and my office phone number are on there. So if you would like to set up a farm visit, if you would like to just email those questions, please send them on over. Okay, I'll leave that up there for just another second. If you guys want to copy that down. All right, well, that was pretty quick, pretty basic. There wasn't too much to cover in our very first session, but thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. This is being recorded and it will be posted onto YouTube, just in case you want to go back and watch anything. But our next session where we will meet again will be Tuesday, June 12th, again at lunchtime. And we're going to talk about housing your cattle. So all the things necessary to keep a happy small herd. And we're also going to be meeting with Blair Gann from Central Bank. She is a VP of commercial lending. So she can really help with those questions on what do you need to get a loan for building a barn or anything of that sort. And then I will also be emailing an evaluation out just for those of you that listened today. If you could just let me know what you liked about the program, what you didn't. And this greatly helps me to construct more things like this to help our dairy farmers and future dairy farmers.